That was an interesting episode of Star Wars Star Wars Skeleton Crew. Hello, interwebs, I hope you're all doing well, and welcome to my review of the latest Star Wars series to premiere on Disney+. This one, the premiere 2 episodes of Star Wars Skeleton Crew. And I bet you the first question that you're going to be asking is, what's going on with this set? Welcome to the set of another video that I'm filming for my main channel right now. It's a bit elaborate at the moment, but this is where my camera is. I was filming here all day, so you're getting me here because I have to film some more stuff even after this. So you're just getting me here. I hope you enjoy the elaborate set. Don't spoil it for the people over on the main channel because I thought this was rather cool looking. So you're getting it a little bit early to the few thousand of you who happen to be catching this review. So again, no spoilers. I will come after you. Don't tell anyone. I'm watching you. But yeah, let us actually talk about this 2-episode premiere. Kind of an interesting one with this one because, this one is clearly, I made the joke earlier at the top that this one has a similar vibe to Star Trek Prodigy, an animated series of Star Trek that I personally really love if you have happened to see it. And certainly there are a certain amount of similarities. A bunch of kids from, a world outside of the main universe of the franchise find a ship and then get sent off and meet like some member of the main Star Wars or Star Trek universe who kind of becomes their mentor. And we kind of get a similar vibe here as they learn to like what that galaxy is all about. Similar vibe here, but this one is, I also think, not just pulling from Prodigy, because that's kind of a more just structure than I think even Prodigy was pulling from other places, but this one's also much more pulling from places like Goonies or E.T., that sort of 1990s era of like kids Spielbergian kind of films, so much more directly to the point of the aesthetic literally being like a suburbia planet that we start the episode on. And I think a lot of people, when they saw the trailer for the show, balked at that. And even I have to admit, I mean, there were the toxic people who was like, Star Wars, it's all awful and everything that comes out of it is trash. But even for me, I had a reaction of like, this does feel a little bit too of our world to feel like it fits into Star Wars. So I was really kind of curious, I'm always willing to go into things with an open mind if this suburbia element of the show would work for me, and if it was just really trying too hard to pull from the, again, 1980s E.T. Goonies style to just sort of say, hey, we're doing that, but it's Star Wars-y. And obviously to a degree that is exactly the case. But what I will give this episode is I actually think it's used to interesting effect, because in our first episode we get kind of an exploration of that world, and while it is again very suburbia, the unique elements of it are some interesting mysteries to this world that I think get played out further as we go longer into the show. But even on its face, this whole world of, the kids don't really interact with many adults, they're all kind of isolated, they're only dealing with droids most of the time, the kid's life is really regimented. That actually is a storyline that I think really fits suburbia in a really interesting way. I mean, a lot of, that era of storytelling was about like kids breaking free of suburbia and this sort of like confined lifestyle that like these capitalism prescribed roles that suburbia represented were. And I think that that's really interesting. And it's also interesting too, like the diverse kids that we get here, because obviously we could talk about the redlining of suburbia. That's something probably beyond this show, but like there's the elements of that sort of capitalist, very prescribed roles that I think this, in a Star Warsian way, is really getting to, right down to the point where when the kids go to school and we learn like, they're contributing to the great work for the New Republic, which again, question mark on if it's actually the New Republic there. I really like this idea of this great work that the kids become analysts for. Like their dreams are like to become analysts or like coders or something like that. So like these very like just boring desk jobs that is just fascinating to me. And this idea of a great work that people are giving themselves to, again, fits that sort of capitalism mentality and also a Star Wars mentality. I mean, Star Wars is always about like fighting fascism and oppression and these systems of control. And that same sort of idea applies here as well. And so I think like in a weird way, not only is it just pulling from the Goonies, it feels like it fits the Star Wars universe in a thematic way too, in one that resonates with the style of kids storytelling that they're going for. So all of that really worked, and obviously, as we expand out into the greater mystery of the show, before I get to the actual kids and their storyline themselves, I think it actually is a really strong mystery about what this planet is. Obviously, when the kids break out and get off planet, there's this barrier that they escape. They haven't even seen stars before. And there's this mystery of like, oh, they don't even know how to get to the planet, and their planet is apparently a land of mystery and like a lost treasure or something like that. So it leaves these questions of like, well, are they actually part of the New Republic? How do they know about the New Republic if they aren't? Why are they pretending to be? Is this something the New Republic knows about? Like, there's a lot of interesting questions opened up by this mystery that I actually think really, really land, which is why I kind of wanted to talk about it first, because I think that's where a lot of people are going to push back against this show, just for that aesthetic that feels very overtly of our world, and especially of America, but I think it works really well, and especially so, I mean, I'll even say this, I mean, Star Wars, while we always say it's otherworldly, it has always pulled from other cultures, and so it'll be like, oh, this is an alien species, and it's just like stealing from Asia or something. So, you know, there's an element of like, oh, we only recognize it as our world because it's pulling from Americana. So that there is something to be said there about that. That is probably longer than an off-the-cuff review for me to really delve into, but it's there. I'll put it out. So yeah, but I do really like that mystery element of it, and it works a lot more for me than I thought it was going to. The rest of the story, I think, is actually, it's again, it kind of goes back to that Star Trek prodigy mindset. Like, we're introduced to the kids, we get to see a little bit of their world, and you know, they have the kid who's kind of like the kid who doesn't study enough. You have the kid who's kind of the nerd. You have the kid who's the rebel, kind of Han Solo-esque girl, and you have the tech geek. Sort of the standard roles for all of them. And you know, the kids don't really super break out of those molds in this episode, nor do they super endear me to them in any unique, special way, like say the kids of Stranger Things did in the first season. My issues with Stranger Things later seasons aside, I think the first season of that show did a really good job of like endearing me to each individual kid really quickly. And this show isn't strong enough that yet for that. Like, I don't hate the kids. I think they're all generally likable, but they still feel a little bit more like types than they do like full kids that I can kind of like, yeah, I really like them. But they are enjoyable enough. There is some tropiness to it that I didn't love. Like, this is a me taste thing, and maybe that's just because this isn't the target. I'm not part of the target audience, but I don't always love the whole like, ew, it's girls. Oh look, the boys versus girls sort of element of it. And yeah, obviously there's the gender stuff that I always touch upon. But I always find that kind of like tropey writing. You know, I always enjoy when I look at like kids movies or TV shows where everyone kind of generally gets along, or like their clicks are less along like those very overt kind of tropey lines, and like you find clicks in a more natural way, and especially in a series that, like, you know, you have a little elephant kid running around. I feel like the diversity of like girls versus boys wouldn't be the line. Not that I necessarily want the show to go into like xenophobia or racism or anything like that, because that's not what the show is really getting at for kids. It doesn't seem, but it is. It doesn't feel. It feels tropey, and it feels like there's better ways you could have done that. You know, I look at, again, I don't always love these movies, but like a good example I think of recent times in franchises is actually the first Spider-Man movie in the MCU, Homecoming. They did a good job in that movie of like all the kids kind of generally vibe, and yeah, they have disagreements, like Flash Thompson's kind of a bully asshole, but it's less along the sort of like tropey 80s things that we got with a lot of that stuff. And I think that this show's kind of leaning a little bit too much on that, to the point where I'm like, it kind of feels a little bit like expected rather than something unique and interesting in there. The other element of all of this that I do really like is we sort of get some goings on with the New Republic. I mean, this is set in kind of the same Mandalorian era of between the end of episode 6 and the beginning of episode 7. So we get to see that there's pirates attacking people. The opening sequence was kind of a fun, thrilling vibe that brought up images of A New Hope, the first sequence where Darth Vader took the ship there, but now with pirates, and sort of a mystery of like, why do we even see those pirates? What was the one credit thing going on there? So like, I'm curious to see, like, it was a good action sequence. I'm curious to see where that's going to go, but well shot as it was. And then getting to see this like pirate hub that they end up on was also really well done. It was shot on the volume, it looks like, and I've always had my criticisms of the volume where everything kind of feels shallow and empty. But I think the way they shot it in this episode works well enough. They filled it with enough people. There was enough things in there that it didn't feel like that one episode of Obi-Wan where Obi-Wan landed on that planet, I think on like episode 1 or 2 of that show, and it felt like they were on this weird planet, and yet there's like 5 little like stands there, and it felt just like a very open, weird space. Here it does at least feel like fairly vibrant and lived in for a starport that pirates are in. So I thought they did a good job on the set design. It's still not of the caliber, I think, of like the original Star Wars trilogy where everything felt lived in and like tactile and analog. I still think that the Star Wars Mandalorian Disney Plus style shows are kind of like trying for that. I think the only show that really got there was Star Wars Andor, because they actually went and built their physical sets instead of using the volume and having it be on this sort of closed off stage. But for what it is, I think they did one of the better jobs that I've seen them do on a show like this. So kudos, like they did the best with a thing that I don't like. So I guess that's a kind of a backhanded compliment there, but there it is. And obviously we meet at the end of the episode Jude Law, who I'm actually kind of surprised that we see him use the Force immediately. Like I would have thought I mean, it's a good cliffhanger, but I kind of would have thought that like, oh, we wouldn't know necessarily if he was a Jedi or not. And the kids would think he's a Jedi, but he's not really, or sorry, the kids would not know he's a Jedi, but we can kind of tell that he is, or something like that. Here, with them introducing like, oh, he has Force powers, and then thinking he's a Jedi immediately, has me thinking, well, maybe that's not actually the case. Maybe he's a Sith or just a general Force user, and there'll be a twist down the road for him. But obviously, there's not enough to speculate on with that just yet, because we just met. I'm literally in the final few minutes of the second episode. So curious to see where that's going to go. I mean, I always love Jude Law. He's always a welcome presence as an actor, so we'll see what material he's given and if he can bring a lot to it, or if it's just going to be me enjoying Jude Law's vibe generally. I think that's pretty much everything that I had. Like I said, I'm not exactly the target audience for this show, but for what it is, I think it's a fun-looking kid show in the Star Wars universe. There's a fun mystery here. The kids are solid, if not fantastic, characters, and I think there's something cooking here that I think could build into something good. It doesn't immediately put me off like I thought it might do just based on the premise. I think there was a danger of that, and I think they did well enough with enough mysteries, enough like good, interesting themes, decent enough characterization, and some good design and stuff like that I think has me intrigued for more. But I'd love to hear all your thoughts. What did you think of this episode of Star Wars Skeleton Crew, or 2 episodes, I should say? Were you more up by it than I was? Were you liking the vibe, not liking the vibe, liking the mysteries, all that sort of stuff? But beyond all of that, my friends, I hope you live long and prosper, and don't spoil the set. I will come after you. See you, Bob. Yeah? Looking at you, Bob.